What if I told you that people don't respect you because of who you are, but because of what you signal? That in the real world, far from the comforting idea that being good is enough, respect is dictated by strength, clarity, and strategic behavior. Think about it for a moment. How many times have you felt ignored, underestimated, or quietly pushed aside, even when your intentions were pure? You ever been in a room where someone with less skill, less depth, or less experience somehow commanded more attention than you? If this has ever happened to you, stay with me until the end, because what you're about to discover might change the way you move through the world. The truth is uncomfortable, but Machiavelli never cared about comfort. He cared about results. He observed something most people never dare to admit. Human interactions are governed by hidden laws, subtle psychological forces, and social dynamics that operate beneath the surface. People are constantly judging, measuring, and responding to the signals you project, often without even realizing it. And those who understand these patterns, these dark social laws, are the ones who rise, who lead, who command respect in silence. You've probably felt this in your own life. Someone enters a space and instantly shifts the atmosphere. No loud words, no aggressive posture, just presence. Meanwhile, others try endlessly to prove themselves and only push respect further away. Why does this happen? What creates this invisible hierarchy? And more importantly, how do you step into the kind of psychological power that forces people to treat you differently? You ever wondered why certain individuals are listened to without question, while others are dismissed before they even speak? Machiavelli understood that society runs on perception, not truth, not fairness, perception. He saw that respect is not something you ask for, it's something you engineer. And once you grasp these dark psychological principles, social dynamics stop feeling random. They start making sense. You begin to see why some people dominate the room effortlessly, why some voices carry weight even in silence, and why certain personalities never seem to be manipulated, pushed, or ignored. The principles you're about to learn are not about pretending to be someone you're not. They're about revealing the stronger version of yourself, the version that the world instinctively recognizes as someone to respect, the version that doesn't need validation, doesn't need applause, and doesn't need to fight for attention. The kind of presence that rewires the social environment around you, the kind of presence that Machiavelli would call strategically powerful. So ask yourself, what would your life look like if people responded to you differently? If your boundaries were instinctively respected? If your silence held more weight than other people's noise? If your presence alone created a shift in how others act around you? These aren't fantasies. They're psychological mechanisms that have existed throughout history. And today you're going to uncover them. You're going to see the social world the way Machiavelli saw it, through clear, unsentimental eyes. You're about to understand the architecture of respect, the hidden rules that operate behind every conversation, every relationship, every moment of influence. Now let's step into the first of the 7 dark social laws. And before we move any deeper into these dark social laws, I want to ask you something, not as a narrator speaking to an audience, but as someone who understands how rare it is to find people searching for this level of psychological clarity. If any part of what you've heard so far resonates with you, if you've ever felt the sting of being overlooked or the frustration of knowing you had more to offer than people were able to see, take a moment and share your experience in the comments. Your voice matters here. Your perspective might even help someone who's going through the same silent battle. This channel has grown into a space where people come to understand themselves, their power, and the deeper rules of the world, and your story is part of that. If this topic makes sense to you, if something in it hits a little too close to home, let me know. Tell me which part struck you the most, or what situation in your life made you realize that respect isn't given freely. I read everything, and your presence here builds a community of people who refuse to walk through life blind to the psychological forces shaping their reality. And if you haven't yet, make sure to like this video. It may seem like a small gesture, but it genuinely helps these ideas reach more people who need them. Every like tells the algorithm that this conversation matters, that these insights deserve to be shared instead of hidden beneath the noise of shallow content. The more you engage, the more the message spreads, and the more people gain the clarity, strength, and inner power they've been craving. And of course, if you want to keep growing with me, if you want more content like this, more psychological depth, more strategic insight, consider subscribing to the channel. When you subscribe, you're not just adding another channel to your list. You're signaling that you're part of this movement of people committed to mastering themselves, understanding the hidden dynamics of power, and living with a sharper sense of awareness. Your involvement is the reason this channel exists, and it's what allows me to continue creating videos like this with intention, depth, and honesty. So stay with me, because we're just getting started. What comes next will uncover the first dark social law, one that has shaped leaders, thinkers, and strategists for centuries. There's a pattern you've probably sensed throughout your life, even if you never had the words to describe it. Some people walk into your world, stay a little too close, talk a little too often, and suddenly the energy shifts. Their presence doesn't feel valuable anymore, not because they're bad people, but because they've erased every bit of space that once made them interesting. This is one of those truths most people never talk about. When you give unlimited access to yourself, you unknowingly dilute your own impact. And that's where the first dark social law begins, understanding the power of controlled distance. Machiavelli saw this centuries ago. He noticed that leaders who were constantly available lost influence, while those who held a certain distance commanded more authority. It wasn't arrogance, it was strategy. When you remove the element of mystery, you remove the tension that makes people pay attention. In every social dynamic, from friendships to leadership to influence, value is created in the space between presence and absence. Too much presence suffocates, too much absence disconnects. But a deliberate balance creates gravity. Think about your own journey. Every time, you made yourself instantly accessible, answering messages the moment they arrived, explaining yourself repeatedly, giving endless chances. You probably noticed respect slipping through your fingers, not because the other person wanted to disrespect you, but because human psychology is wired that way. We chase what's slightly out of reach. We admire what isn't constantly in our face. We value what feels intentional. When you're always available, always explaining, always present, people stop noticing the weight of your presence. It becomes background noise. But when your presence becomes deliberate, when your words are chosen carefully, when your actions feel intentional, when you give space instead of constant availability, something shifts. You create a subtle psychological tension, the kind that pulls people toward you instead of pushing them away. This is not manipulation. It's understanding the truth hidden beneath social behavior. Distance creates room for others to reflect, to miss you, to feel the impact of your absence and to anticipate your return. It elevates your image in their mind, sometimes without them even realizing why. And here's the part most people never recognize. Unpredictability is a form of power. When people can't fully read you, they pay attention. When they don't know your next move, they respect your decisions. Controlled distance creates that effect. It protects your energy, sharpens your boundaries, and builds an aura around your identity. Machiavelli would say that a leader must never allow themselves to be fully understood, because mystery forces others to approach with caution and curiosity. It's not about being cold, it's about being intentional with your presence. Now I want to go even deeper into this truth, because the more you understand how distance shapes perception, the more you'll see how it silently rewrites the way people treat you. But before we continue, tell me something in the comments. Write, "This makes sense" to if you've ever felt the impact of giving too much access to the wrong people. Silence is one of the most misunderstood forms of power, yet it's the one that consistently separates people who react from people who command. Most individuals rush to fill every pause, explain every detail, justify every feeling, and respond the moment pressure appears. But the people who truly hold influence, the ones who shape conversations, not follow them, do the exact opposite. They lean into silence. They let others speak first. They allow the moment to breathe just long enough for truth to rise to the surface. And because so few are comfortable with silence, those who master it instantly stand out. There's something almost unsettling about someone who doesn't react right away. You've seen this before, maybe even felt it yourself. You say something, expecting a quick answer, and the other person just waits, their eyes steady, their breath calm, their posture unchanged. That single moment of quiet forces you to notice your own words, your own intentions, your own anxieties. Strategic silence doesn't just influence others, it exposes them. It reveals insecurities, hidden motives, and emotional impulses that would stay concealed if you reacted too quickly. When you remain still, people reveal who they are. This is why silence is feared, not because it's empty, but because it isn't. It's a mirror, and when someone can't read your thoughts, your reactions, or your emotional temperature, they lose their sense of control. That uncertainty places the power back in your hands without you lifting a single finger. The most intelligent people understand this. They know that reacting instantly is a sign of emotional vulnerability, while pausing creates space for clarity, calculation, and psychological insight. You learn far more by waiting than by rushing. Machiavelli understood this deeply. He wrote about the importance of observing before acting, of letting others speak openly while you remain measured. In silence, you gather information. You analyze intentions. You watch how people position themselves. While they talk, you learn. While they rush, you calculate. While they expose their thoughts, you prepare your next move. Silence becomes a shield and a weapon at the same time. It protects your intentions and sharpens your strategy. And here's the psychological truth few people consider. The less you speak, the more people listen when you finally do. Scarcity raises value, and silence creates that scarcity. Every word becomes intentional, every sentence becomes meaningful, and your presence naturally gains weight. Silence isn't about withholding your voice, it's about elevating it. It's about shifting from reacting emotionally to responding strategically. When you speak after silence, people feel the impact, because your voice enters a space they didn't expect you to control. And the more you practice this, the more you'll notice the difference. Conversations become clearer, conflicts calm down, people rethink how they approach you. Silence creates a psychological boundary that demands respect, because it shows you're not governed by impulse. You choose your moment, you choose your words, you choose your energy. Now I want to go even deeper into how this form of restraint transforms your social presence and amplifies your influence in ways most people never notice. There's a certain kind of presence that instantly changes the energy in any room, not because it's loud, not because it's intimidating, but because it's steady, completely steady. It's the presence of someone who doesn't crack under pressure, doesn't react to provocation, and doesn't let their emotions drag them into battles that aren't worth fighting. This is the essence of unshakable self-command, and whether people admit it or not, they instinctively respect it. Emotional composure is rare, and anything rare becomes valuable. You've probably noticed how most people operate. The slightest criticism, and they explode. A minor inconvenience, and they spiral. One unexpected comment, and they fall into defensiveness, anger, or insecurity. They reveal every fear, every trigger, every unresolved wound. But the person who stays calm, who maintains that inner stillness even when chaos rises around them, immediately shifts into a position of psychological authority. Emotional detachment isn't coldness, it's clarity. It's the ability to separate what's happening outside of you from what's happening inside you. This is where Jung's shadow becomes relevant. Jung believed that until you face your own inner chaos, the world will always have power over you. The parts of yourself that you refuse to acknowledge are the same parts others can use to control you. When you haven't mastered your shadow, your fears, your impulsiveness, your insecurity, anyone can pull an emotional string and make you react. But when you've confronted those internal forces, when you've accepted them, integrated them, and understood them, something shifts. You stop being predictable, you stop being fragile, you stop being manipulated. Stoic philosophy echoed this truth long before psychology gave it language. To the Stoics, mastery didn't come from controlling the world. It came from controlling your response to it. When you govern your reactions, you govern your reality, and people sense that immediately. It's the quiet stability of someone who doesn't need to win every argument, doesn't need to prove their worth, doesn't need to match someone else's emotional chaos. Emotional self-command becomes a shield that no amount of noise can penetrate. When you remain grounded in a moment where others are losing themselves, you become the anchor in the room. People gravitate toward those who are stable, especially when instability surrounds them. Emotional detachment creates psychological elevation. It places you above the situation, not dragged into its turbulence. You become the one who observes, evaluates, and decides, instead of the one who reacts, panics, or overexposes their inner world. It's not about distancing yourself from feeling, it's about mastering the way those feelings translate into action. And here's the unspoken truth. When you control your reactions, You quietly take control of the entire environment. You dictate the tempo. You set the emotional tone. You influence how others adjust themselves around you. People respect what they cannot easily shake, and a calm mind is one of the hardest things to destabilize. It signals strength, depth, and inner discipline, qualities that make others instinctively recalibrate their behavior in your presence. Now I want to take this even deeper and explore how this kind of internal mastery transforms not just your relationships, but the power you carry as you move through your everyday life. There's a particular trap that many good people fall into without even noticing it. They believe that kindness is always the right answer, that generosity automatically earns respect, and that being endlessly accommodating will make others appreciate them more. But Machiavelli saw the opposite pattern repeated throughout history. Compulsive kindness doesn't inspire gratitude. It breeds entitlement. When kindness becomes automatic, people stop seeing it as kindness and start seeing it as your default role. And once something becomes expected, it loses its value. This is why approval-seeking behavior backfires so intensely. When your kindness comes from fear of disappointing someone, fear of conflict, fear of not being liked, it stops being an act of strength and becomes an act of self-protection. People can feel this difference, even if they can't articulate it. Instinctively, they sense when you're giving because you want to versus giving because you're afraid not to, and they respond accordingly. Approval-seeking kindness invites disrespect because it signals that your boundaries are negotiable. It tells the world that you're willing to shrink yourself in exchange for acceptance. Selective kindness, on the other hand, carries a different weight entirely. It's the kind of kindness that comes from power, calculated, intentional, and rooted in self-respect. It's not given to everyone, it's not given at every moment. And precisely because it's rare, it becomes meaningful. People value what they cannot take for granted. They pay attention to the person who gives without losing themselves, who helps without being drained, who offers warmth without letting others treat it as an unlimited resource. Machiavelli understood that human nature responds to scarcity. When your kindness is constant, it blends into the background and becomes invisible. But when your kindness is a choice, something you extend consciously, not compulsively, it becomes a signal of character, not weakness. You're no longer trying to be liked. You're choosing who and what is worthy of your effort. This shift changes everything about how people treat you. They stop assuming you'll always say yes. They stop pushing past your limits. They stop interpreting your generosity as insecurity. And here's the deeper psychological truth. Powerful kindness is grounded in self-command. It's an expression of someone who doesn't need validation, someone who isn't afraid of losing approval, someone who understands their own value. When you offer kindness from that place, people feel it. They may not consciously think, this person has strong boundaries, but they will instinctively sense that your generosity isn't a loophole to exploit. It becomes an earned gesture, not a free pass. Selective kindness also reveals who people really are. When you're not constantly giving, you see who stays. When you stop overextending, you see who respects your boundaries. When your kindness becomes deliberate, you attract those who appreciate you rather than those who depend on your inability to say no. This law protects your energy, strengthens your relationships, and shifts your social presence from overly accommodating to quietly authoritative. Now I want to take this understanding even deeper, because once you see how your generosity shapes the dynamics around you, you'll start to notice another hidden pattern that plays an even bigger role in how people respect or disrespect your presence. There's a silent structure beneath every relationship you have, and most people never stop to notice it. It's made of invisible lines, subtle limits, unspoken rules, quiet expectations that determine how others treat you long before any words are exchanged. These are your boundaries, not the dramatic ones people announce in moments of frustration, but the ones revealed in the small, consistent ways you choose to show up. And whether you're aware of them or not, those boundaries shape every interaction around you. The mistake many people make is believing that boundaries must be expressed loudly to be respected. They think they need long explanations, emotional speeches, or warnings to make people understand, but the truth is far simpler and far more powerful. Real boundaries are not performed, they're lived. They show up in your actions, in what you allow, in what you tolerate, and in the quiet decisions you make about where your energy goes. People learn who you are not by what you declare, but by what you consistently reinforce without saying a word. Quiet boundaries carry weight. Because they communicate stability. When you enforce a limit subtly, by not replying to disrespect, by stepping back from someone who drains you, by choosing your time and attention intentionally, you send a message much stronger than any confrontation could deliver. You signal that you're not controlled by guilt, pressure, or fear of displeasing others. You show that your dignity isn't negotiable, and people feel this. They adjust their tone, their expectations, their behavior, often without understanding why. The shift happens because your actions have already defined the rule. Powerful individuals operate this way. They rarely argue about how they deserve to be treated. They simply model it. When someone crosses a line, they respond with quiet, consistent action, not emotional outbursts. They don't fight for respect. They behave in a way that makes disrespect impossible. That's why others handle them with more care, not because they're intimidating, but because their boundaries are woven into their identity. It's a form of self-respect that requires no performance. Think about the people you've admired in your own life, the ones who seemed naturally respected, even by those who didn't always agree with them. Their strength didn't come from being loud. It came from being immovable in the right ways. They didn't need to prove themselves or explain their choices. Their boundaries created an atmosphere around them, a kind of quiet gravity that told everyone exactly what was acceptable and what wasn't. You felt it without them saying a single word. And here's the deeper truth. When your boundaries are quiet and consistent, they free you from unnecessary conflict. There's no need for arguments, no need for emotional tension, no need for dramatic confrontations. You simply act, and your actions do the teaching. People will either respond with respect or remove themselves, and both outcomes protect your peace. Understanding this transforms not just your relationships, but your entire social presence. It allows you to move through the world with a calm certainty that others can't easily shake. And once you learn to live your boundaries instead of announcing them, you'll notice something else rise to the surface, another layer of power that shapes the way people behave around you in even more subtle ways. There's a truth about human behavior that most people avoid because it feels uncomfortable. People don't change because you ask them to, or because you explain your feelings, or because you hope they will understand. They change because something in the environment forces them to adjust, and in relationships, that something is always consequence. Not loud punishment, not emotional explosions, but calm, predictable consequence. The kind that doesn't come from anger but from self-respect. This is where real influence begins to form. The difference between emotional punishment and strategic consequence is huge. Emotional punishment is chaotic. It comes from frustration, disappointment, or exhaustion. It looks like yelling, arguing, withdrawing affection, or trying to make someone feel guilty. And because it's emotional, it never lands the way you want it to. People get defensive, they push back harder, or they simply wait for the storm to pass so everything can return to normal. Nothing truly changes. Strategic consequences, on the other hand, are quiet. They're consistent. They're rooted in your values, not in your reactions. You don't need to raise your voice or demand anything. You simply make a decision and follow through. If someone consistently disrespects your time, you become less available. If someone crosses a line, you reduce access. If someone ignores your efforts, you stop giving what isn't appreciated. No drama, no speeches, no emotional storms, just action. Machiavelli understood this deeply. He warned leaders never to rely on threats because threats expose weakness. When you threaten, you're showing your need for the other person to comply. But when you act without warning, calmly, confidently, predictably, you create a different psychological response. People sense that you don't depend on their reactions. You're not trying to control them. You're simply choosing the environment you allow yourself to be in. That's what makes consequence powerful. It doesn't force people to change. It forces them to rethink how they treat you. And here's the subtle truth most people miss. Calm consequences create respect, not fear. Fear fades quickly and breeds resentment. Respect grows slowly and lasts. When people see that your actions always match your standards, they start taking you seriously. They understand there are lines that cannot be crossed, not because you'll explode, but because you'll simply adjust your presence. You become someone who is stable, clear, and not easily shaken. And the more consistent you are, the less you ever need to correct anyone. Your actions already set the rules. This form of power also creates emotional freedom. Instead of wasting energy on frustration or trying to convince someone to change, you allow your behavior to do the communicating. You stop trying to control others and start controlling your environment. It's a shift from reaction to strategy, from emotional dependency to emotional sovereignty. And once you experience this, you'll notice a transformation in how people interact with you. They become more cautious with your time, more thoughtful with their words, more aware of their impact, because they understand, often subconsciously, that losing access to you has real cost. And now that we've unlocked the psychology of consequences, there's an even deeper layer of internal power that shapes how others perceive you, one that goes beyond boundaries, beyond distance, and into the core of who you are becoming. There's a quiet magnetism that surrounds people who stand firmly on their own feet, an aura that doesn't need to announce itself, doesn't beg for approval, and doesn't cling to anyone for validation. This is the essence of self-sufficiency, and it's one of the strongest forms of social gravity you can cultivate. People instinctively respect those who don't need anything from them because independence creates a psychological shift. If you cannot be bought, swayed, or destabilized, you become a presence others instinctively calibrate themselves around. Most of the tension in human relationships comes from unspoken need. When someone feels like you depend on their attention, their approval, their guidance, or their validation, the dynamic becomes uneven. They rise, you fall. But when you walk into a room anchored in yourself, emotionally, mentally, spiritually, you remove that invisible pressure. You stop needing people to respond a certain way. You stop chasing, explaining, or proving. And without that need, you automatically gain power. You become the one who chooses, not the one who waits to be chosen. This is why self-sufficient individuals are so compelling. They carry themselves as if they belong anywhere, even when they're silent. Their decisions feel grounded, their energy feels stable, their presence feels calm. In a world full of people who crumble under uncertainty, the one who stands steady becomes the natural point of orientation for everyone else. It mirrors the stoic ideal, strength that comes from within, not from circumstance. Jung would describe this as individuation, the process of becoming whole in yourself, integrating your shadow, your fears, your contradictions, until you no longer need the world to complete you. When someone reaches this state, they become almost immovable, not rigid, but deeply rooted. Others sense it. They feel that your identity isn't up for negotiation, that your worth doesn't fluctuate based on external approval. You become someone who cannot be easily manipulated because your center of gravity is internal, not external. And here's the part that truly reshapes your social power. When you don't need anything from people, the things you do offer become infinitely more meaningful. Your attention becomes a choice, not a request. Your presence becomes a gift, not a plea. Your boundaries become natural, not forced. Nothing attracts respect faster than someone who stands alone because they want to, not because they're avoiding connection, but because they've built a foundation that no one else has the power to shake. When you look at all these laws together, their pattern becomes unmistakable. Respect is never demanded. It's engineered through psychology, through behavior, through self-mastery. It's shaped quietly, from the inside out. Every decision you make, every boundary you enforce, every moment you choose silence over reaction adds another layer to the identity you're building. And that identity teaches the world exactly how to treat you. So pause for a moment and reflect. Which of these laws are already part of your life? Which ones do you rely on naturally? And which ones do you need to strengthen to become the kind of person others instinctively respect? If you want more Machiavellian insights like this, subscribe and turn on all notifications. This channel exists to make you stronger, sharper, and impossible to manipulate. If you're still here with me, it tells me something important. This kind of depth, this kind of psychological clarity resonates with you on a level most people never explore. And if that's the case, I'd genuinely like to have you as part of this community. So if the message of this video added something real to your journey, consider subscribing. It helps me keep bringing you content that sharpens your mind, strengthens your presence, and gives you tools most people never learn. And before you go, leave a comment so I know you made it all the way to the end. Just write something simple like, "This message was for me." It creates a space where I can see who's truly walking this path with me, and it means more than you might imagine. If you felt a connection with this video, a like is always appreciated. It's a subtle way of saying that these ideas matter to you, and it helps this conversation reach the people who need it. Now, don't stop here. There's another video waiting for you right beside this one that goes even deeper into the kind of power and self-mastery we talked about today. Click on it and continue with me over there.